Hey YouTube, it's Jordan with Studio GBK, and today I take this slab of Monterey Cypress that I got for only 50 cents, well actually it was $50, and turn it into a live edge mirror that I'm very proud of. I also made this other mirror out of that same slab and stained it with a gun stock wood stain, which is why it's a different color. But this video is about the other mirror that I made, which I ended up staining black for the customer, so stay tuned for that one. Forgive me for uploading another YouTube video in TikTok format. I initially thought this was going to just be a short, but I got a bunch of questions in my comments from different people asking about the process, so I've decided to go into more detail. As you can see, I debarked this and removed all the softwood with a hook tool. I rolled up some Abernet sandpaper to get deep inside the hole there and really smooth it out to the best of my ability, starting with 80 grit and moving on up to 120. After removing the softwood, I proceeded to sand off the face of the slab and remove all the lines that you see there. I'm getting ready to seal the slab with epoxy, and so I want the wood as clean as possible before I do that, because if I seal it with these lines still there, it will be difficult to remove them. It can feel a bit tedious, but as you can see there, the lines fade away, revealing the beautiful grain of the wood. Once I sand the slab up to about 180 grit, I take a measurement, draw a straight line, and cut it to the rough size that I want. I recommend going bigger than your desired size to leave room for error in sanding. As you can see there, I sanded off the edge after cutting it because we don't want this hurting someone once I sell it. And from here I'm ready to seal the slab and fill in the holes. For this one I used art resin, which is a two-part epoxy that works really well, and I basically mix half resin and half hardener and stir them together for about 120 seconds. I think that's 2 minutes. Yeah. I basically I basically pour the epoxy over the entire slab and I spread it across the slab evenly with the same popsicle stick that I stirred it with. I do recommend using gloves so the epoxy doesn't get on your hands, even though I just went for it on this one barehanded because I just wanted to get it done and I didn't want to fiddle around searching for my gloves. Now I seal the inside of these holes with epoxy before actually filling the hole because it prevents bubbles from leaking out from the wood. The wood has moisture and air inside of it that leaks out once you pour epoxy into the hole, and this initial seal provides a protective layer that will prevent those bubbles from coming out and ruining the finish. I'd also like to throw in there that I watched a video that says that you're not supposed to use popsicle sticks to stir, but I didn't know that at the time. They also have moisture, and that causes there to be more bubbles in the epoxy. So in the future, I won't be using wooden objects to stir the epoxy. I recommend that you don't do it either. So I seal the holes first and leave them to dry for 24 hours. Now I had some people in the comments saying that they liked the hole and kind of suggesting that I not fill it in, which to be honest annoyed me because this isn't your hole, so how can you tell me what to do with it? I got this hole covered and I don't need your opinions, but I do respect them. And filling these holes got me millions of views across different platforms, which was exciting and surprising. I don't know why so many people like watching this, but they did. Um, I also had some people in the comments with some interesting things to say about this project. They came up with some pretty creative words that I didn't think of. A couple of guys commented saying that they should call her maybe, and I honestly don't know who she is or whether it's a good idea to call her or not, but I try to give the best advice that I can. One guy said the hole looks familiar, and I don't know what that means or who they're talking about, but feel free to let me know in the comments. Now, once I finish sealing all of the holes, I flip this slab over so I can prepare the other side to pour in the epoxy. I start by cutting this cardboard to a size that's large enough to cover the desired hole, and once that's cut, I basically surround the hole with this all-purpose caulking from Home Depot. Epoxy obviously starts off as a liquid, and this will stop it from leaking out when I pour it. From there, I cover the cardboard with tuck tape, the same tape that you would use when pouring an epoxy table, and this just prevents the epoxy from sticking to the cardboard. Remember, epoxy sticks to everything. So I cut it with a flat blade. You want to try to not drop it in the caulking like I did right there. After that, I pressed that side with the tuck tape down as flat as possible, and I ran another bead of caulking around the perimeter of the cardboard to prevent the resin from leaking out. Then I secure it in place using red tape to make sure it stays where I want and sticks to the wood. Then I flip it back over and we're ready to pour the epoxy. I used the same art resin that I sealed the slab with and mixed it up really well and poured it into the holes. I come back with a blowtorch to erase all the bubbles that come up in the epoxy and just monitor it for a bit because new bubbles will come, and I'm going for a nice clear glass type of look, not an amateur hour kind of finish. I removed the tape and cardboard backing, and from there I began the sanding process, starting off with 100 grit and moving all the way up to 600. And I make sure to blow off the dust between passes to prevent those little pinwheels and scratches that I don't want. And the smoother that this epoxy gets, the more light that shines through, and it adds a really cool effect. Now it's time to cut the slab and mirror to the exact same size. And I want to capture as much of that live edge as possible, so I put my level and T-square up as high as I could on the slab and make a line with a pencil across the slab and extend that line across the mirror with a sharp black marker. And then I'm ready to make my cuts. I cut through the slab along that line with my skill saw, and I free-handed it, but you can always clamp a straight edge if it makes you feel more comfortable. Now, I'm not a mirror cutting expert, so please don't attack me in the comments about this, glazers. There's always an online expert that really wants to put you down in the comments, and I did ask for feedback on my videos, but I've definitely got a lot more than I bargained for, to say the least. So I clamped a straight edge slightly offset from that line so that my glass cutter will glide perfectly across it. And I know there are special glass cutting oils, but I wasn't about to order it and wait for it to come in the mail. So I actually went out on a limb here and used walrus oil, dipped the glass cutter in the oil, and made my cut. After making the cut, I just lifted up and snapped off the small piece that I don't need and sanded off that edge to make sure that it doesn't cut anyone open. Glass is extremely sharp, so if you guys do this at home, just be very careful with those sharp edges. You're actually supposed to use a belt sander to sand it, but I don't have one, so Festool it is. And I started off with 100 grit and moved up to 600, sanding off that edge. The higher you go with the grit, the shinier and more polished it will be. Once everything was cut to size, I stained the wood with that same walrus oil, which really brought out the nice natural color of the wood. And after that, I attached these strips of wood using liquid nails to make sure that the mirror would be nice and straight. And I glued the mirror to the slab using a high bond silicone, and I made sure not to cover my holes with the mirror so the natural light can shine through. And I let that dry and cure for 72 hours. The final result when I was done came out like this, and my friend who ended up buying this off me for $300 wanted me to stain it black to match his other furniture, which sounded crazy to me at the time, but it really came out nice. And that's it for this video. Thanks guys for watching, and I will see you all on the next one.